Today we're looking at how $2.5 billion worth of Spanish investments are transforming Jamaica. Welcome to episode 122. So our focus today is on a really significant and pretty consistent economic relationship in the Caribbean.
Yeah, we're talking about Spain and Jamaica.
Exactly. This massive strategic flow of Spanish money into Jamaica. It's not building, billion-dollar resorts anymore. It seems like it's really reshaping the whole infrastructure picture there. When you see a number like, US $2.5 billion heading to an island nation, you've got to ask, right, what's driving that confidence?
And how does it fundamentally change things for Jamaica? What does that kind of partnership really mean on the ground?
Right. And to figure that out, we're looking at some pretty solid sources today. We've got info from the Jamaica Information Service, that's JISS, and also some analysis from the Jamaica Observer.
Yeah, good sources. And what jumps out straight away from those is just how deep this relationship goes. It's more than just standard foreign investment. Well, Jamaica's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson Smith, she actually called Spain a strategic partner.
Strategic partner. Okay, that sounds important.
It is. That's not just, bureaucratic talk. It means at the very top, they see this investment as absolutely core, like a pillar for hitting their national development targets, not just making profits for Spanish companies.
And the money itself, the $2.5 billion.
That's the truth, isn't it? That huge amount, mostly flowing in over the last 10 years or so, shows just how strategically vital they view this partnership.
Okay, so let's start with that big picture then, the macro view. Because, that kind of money doesn't just show up unless the place receiving it is looking pretty solid, right?
Absolutely not.
And over the past decade, Jamaica's actually gained this reputation, hasn't it, as a model of sound economic management. What does that actually mean for, say, an international investor looking at the island?
It means discipline, stability. That's gold for big, long-term investors who don't like surprises. It signals that Jamaica got serious about managing its budget, cutting debt, and just making the rules clear and reliable.
So cleaning up the books, basically.
Pretty much. They stabilized the ship, you could say. And that stability is like a green light for serious foreign capital. The kind that needs to know the ground rules won't suddenly change halfway through a massive decades-long project.
Okay, that makes sense from Jamaica's side. What about Spain? Why them?
Well, that's the other side of the coin. You've got the Spanish ambassador, Jose Maria Fernandez Lopez de Torizo, pointing out that Spain's economy has been the fastest growing in the whole Eurozone.
Really? Fastest in the Eurozone?
Yeah. So you have this stable but, high growth Spanish economy generating capital that's looking for good opportunities outside Europe where things might be a bit crowded.
So Spanish money looking for a home.
In Jamaica, offering a newly stable, welcoming one. You put those two things together, Spain's available cash and Jamaica's economic stability, and boom, you get this $2.5 billion result. Spanish firms aren't just players there. They're some of the biggest investors overall.
It's a real synergy then. Jamaica provides the reliable environment. Spain provides the massive investment needed to really move the needle.
Precisely. And that's why you hear the minister openly saying how crucial these Spanish companies are, not just as businesses, but as, essential partners in reaching Jamaica's national goals.
It's almost political validation as much as commercial success.
I'd say so. That scale of investment, especially when you think about it relative to Jamaica's overall economy, it's about the strongest vote of confidence you could possibly get. They're betting billions on Jamaica sticking the landing, economically speaking.
Okay, let's drill down into where most of that bet has landed so far, which is tourism. We keep saying the number, but it's worth repeating. Over US $2.5 billion from Spain into Jamaica's tourism.
Yeah, it's huge.
And the sources are clear. Spain is now the single largest investor in absolute dollars in the island's tourism sector. That's just, wow, total dominance on the beachfront almost.
And it's not just happening randomly. It's actually formalized now through policy, which is an important piece for you to understand.
Formalized how?
Back in January, the two countries signed a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, specifically about cooperating internationally on tourism.
Okay, an MOU. So more than just a friendly agreement.
Oh, yeah. It's a framework. It lays out how these investments should align with shared goals moving forward. It's about making sure everyone's pouring in the same direction.
Interesting. What kind of shared goals are we talking about? Is it just about getting more tourists?
It goes quite a bit deeper. The MOU talks about strengthening ties in things like gastronomy. So food culture, developing human capital, meaning skills training for locals.
Okay.
And really importantly, sector resilience.
Resilience. That sounds key for an island nation. What does that entail?
Exactly. For Jamaica, resilience means things like making sure the infrastructure can handle hurricanes, right? Ensuring hotels can keep running after disruptions, planning for climate change impacts, even buffering against global economic downturns.
So future-proofing these huge investments.
That's the idea. The MOU commits both sides to sharing knowledge and best practices to make sure these billions aren't vulnerable to, the next big storm or economic shock. It ties the money to long-term sustainability.
So that $2.5 billion isn't just building hotels, it's building resilient hotels with shared expertise on how to do that. Okay, now let's put some names to these projects. We know the big Spanish chains are involved. Who are we talking about?
Yep, the big players are definitely leading the charge. Think names like the Palladium Group, Princess Hotels, Bahia Principe.
Familiar names in the resort world.
Very. And we're not talking minor refurbs here. The sources mention billion-dollar investments in the coming years from these groups.
Billion-dollar investments, plural. Okay, can we look at a specific example? How does this play out on the ground?
Sure. Let's take the new Grand Palladium hotel project over in Hanover. Construction kicked off in February. It's kind of a perfect case study.
Okay, Grand Palladium, Hanover. What makes it a good example?
Well, first, just the sheer scale. It's adding 950 new rooms. That alone is a massive boost to Jamaica's room stock, like immediately.
950 rooms, that's significant. But I remember reading something else about that project. Something about the workers.
Yes. And this is, I think, a really telling detail. The project includes dedicated housing for 550 staff members.
Wow, housing for 550 people. That's practically a small village.
It's a major investment in itself, and what it signals is that these Spanish chains are thinking strategically about labor. Recruiting and keeping good staff is a huge challenge in island tourism everywhere.
So they're building the workforce support structure right alongside the resort?
Exactly. It shows they're investing in the stability of their own operations long term. It's not just about the physical hotel. It's about the people needed to run it successfully. They're building an ecosystem.
And connecting back to that MOU, that resilience focus, are these new projects being built differently? Greener, maybe?
That's the other key piece. The minister specifically highlighted the emphasis on green planning and design for this project.
Green planning. What does that mean in practice for a resort?
For you, the listener, think better energy efficiency, smart water use, maybe even things like on-site solar power or better waste management. It's about building infrastructure that's fit for the future, considering environmental impact and running costs, not just pouring concrete.
Setting a higher standard, essentially.
Definitely. It potentially raises the bar for energy use and environmental design in Jamaica's whole tourism sector.
And the jobs. That's always the big question with these developments.
Huge impact there. These specific projects like Palladium are expected to create thousands of jobs, direct employment, plus all the knock-on effects for local suppliers and services.
And the ambassador mentioned something about community involvement.
Yeah, he stressed that the Spanish hotel investments generally try to follow best practices in community involvement. So the idea is to make sure the benefits spread out, that local businesses get a piece of the action from these massive resorts operating nearby.
Okay, so it's large-scale investment, but tied to labor support, environmental standards, and community links. That seems like a pretty sophisticated approach for the tourism sector.
It is. It's foundational.
But here's where it gets maybe even more interesting. Is this confidence just about beaches and hotels? Because $2.5 billion is a lot, but if it's all tourism, that feels a bit one-dimensional.
That's a great question. And the answer, according to the sources, is no. Tourism is the anchor, for sure, the huge number. But it's definitely not the only place Spanish companies are putting their money.
Okay, so they're diversifying their bets within Jamaica.
Exactly. And this is where you see it shift from just, strong investment in a profitable sector to something that looks more like a real deep belief in Jamaica's overall economic future and its role in the region.
How so?
Well, think about it. If all the money was just going into tourism, you might think, okay, they just see Jamaica as a great place to vacation. But if they're investing in the sectors that underpin the whole economy,
then they see Jamaica itself as a stable, growing economic entity, not just a holiday spot.
Precisely. It suggests they see long-term potential beyond tourism.
So what are these other sectors? Where else are Spanish firms active?
The ambassador actually listed several quite varied areas. We're seeing Spanish companies involved in renewable energy.
Okay, renewables. That's long-term.
Definitely. Also construction, consulting services, healthcare, and significantly logistics.
Logistics. That's interesting. Why logistics?
Think about Jamaica's location, right? Close to major shipping lanes, a potential hub for the wider Caribbean. Investing heavily in logistics suggests Spanish firms see Jamaica playing that kind of regional connector role. They're backing the infrastructure needed to move stuff around.
So betting on Jamaica as a hub, not just a destination, and renewables, you mentioned, that also speaks to long-term thinking, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You don't build solar plants or wind farms thinking short-term. That's a decades-long commitment. It implies faith in the stability of the economy and the grid for 20, 30 years.
Right. And construction, consulting, healthcare, it paints a picture of investment in the fundamental building blocks of the country.
It really does. Investing in construction and consulting helps build the nation's general infrastructure. Putting money into healthcare supports the social fabric, helps attract and keep skilled workers. It all points towards a deep-seated confidence.
So pulling it all together, this broadening out beyond tourism into these core sectors, it really underscores that phrase, profound vote of confidence. It's not just talk.
It's a powerful validation, yeah. It shows belief in Jamaica as a solid, diversified place to invest, and frankly, it validates the economic path Jamaica's been on for the last decade.
So for you listening, what's the big takeaway here? We've really seen this clear cycle, haven't we? Jamaica gets its economic house in order, creates this attractive, stable environment.
Right, step one.
And then Spain steps in with this huge, sustained wave of capital, over $2.5 billion now, that's not just transforming the tourism landscape with massive modern resorts.
That is also spreading into really crucial areas like logistics, like renewable energy, that support the entire economy.
It's a powerful combination.
And this brings us right back to those concepts we talked about earlier, green planning and sector resilience. Because this Spanish investment is so big, and it's now being tied to these higher standards for sustainability and environment.
It sets a new benchmark.
It can't not set a benchmark, right? Which leads to a really interesting question for you to think about. Are these huge, new, relatively green Spanish resorts going to effectively force the rest of the tourism industry in Jamaica, maybe even local developers, to lift their own game?
To compete, they'll have to meet similar standards.
Potentially, yeah. Will we see pressure mount on older properties or smaller local businesses to adopt better environmental practices, maybe even better labor practices like providing housing? Just to stay competitive in the market, these Spanish giants are reshaping. That kind of ripple effect, that raising of the bar across the board, that could be the real long-term transformation here.
How foreign capital can end up driving local standards. Fascinating stuff. Thank you for joining us for this look into the $2.5 billion Spanish investment transforming Jamaica.